Kampung Baru comes alive in the rhythm of everyday life. A small settlement in Kuala Lumpur, founded at the turn of the 20th century, its market bustles on weekend mornings and its food streets fill with motorcycles in the evening. The zinc roofs of its homes and lurid umbrellas of its stalls, domineered by the skyscrapers in the background. To many, it stands as a romantic symbol of a simpler kampung life in a world overtaken by the urban. Yet this unassuming Malay enclave belies a far more complicated history. It was both where the first Malay Congress was held and where the May 13 riots were sparked. Urban poverty is widespread, and its residents live in fragile conditions. The village was nearly destroyed by floods in 1971 and again in 2021. Its lack of development is often conflated with a sense of quaint anachronism, with a CNN article declaring Kampung Baru to be lost in time. Now gazetted for redevelopment, a Malay heritage park has been proposed where 11 wooden stilt homes will be conserved so that, according to 𝘚𝘵𝘪𝘭𝘵 the Malay image and the image of Kampung Baru are retained. Being outside of time has endured so persistently in the popular imagination of Kampung Baru that its commemorative park captures this very sentiment. Lost, frozen, floating.
I tak tahu diorang. Tapi for me, macam Malaysia, kita kalau you perasan, keep on talking about sustainable development. Dan apa yang saya nampak dalam Malaysia ni, bila cakap sentuh perkataan development, dia akan demolish dan create satu bangunan baru ke apa.
Over the past year, artist Leon Leong spent 2 months living in Kampung Baru, where upon his stay and his frequent visits back, he familiarized himself with the nuances of its narratives and geographies. The image that emerged was not of a place frozen in time, but a palimpsest of lived experience, compressed by the density of the city. In search of a formal response, Leon turned to Indo-Persian miniatures, itself a mode of representation conspicuously belonging to the 15th and 16th centuries. Taken as a series, Stilt Houses, the floating world of Kampung Baru, roughly tracks the 100 years of Kampung Baru's history, tracing the lives, loves, and dramas of residents, from the story of its founding to its political turmoil in the late 20th century. But within the world of each painting, time is suspended. Distinct historical events exist alongside each other in theatre of history, while Progress of Love tracks the seasons of a family's use of a house, allowing what Leon calls a spontaneous temporality that compresses multiple spaces and temporalities on the same plane. Stories and myth, ordinarily recited in linear time, are superimposed on the spatial logic of a page. The tale unfolds with the eye as it travels across the rectangular bounds of paper. As Leon puts it, rather than a realistic depiction, pictorially, it tells a story. His image of Kampung Baru tracks the thematic tendencies of memory, grouped not by sequential time, but by feeling. Leon's intricate paintings, like miniatures of the past, put people in space. As we are always living in an environment, it is the context for who we are. Each painting is anchored by a structure or a set of structures, and past and present residents of Kampung Baru play out their lives in these architectures as if in a stage set. Buildings and landscapes are depicted in mathematically idealized isometric projection, but within them, bodies in skewed perspective are put to work as they enact their aspirations onto the space of Kampung Baru. Men hoist wooden beams to build homes. Fists are raised in protest, with a conviction of political beliefs. Residents whisper into each other's ears as tycoons eye the dollar signs of development. No one person's story is given more truth, although some are given more narrative space than others. Like an anthropologist, Leon's diligent recordings are combined with an awareness of his status as an outsider. The result is a series of images characterized not by a flat, omniscient eye that sees all, but rather by a perspective that simultaneously zooms in on certain characters and zooms out to a larger plot structure. Leon noted that in recent years, he has shifted his representational strategy from the more objective optical perspective of the Renaissance to the more subjective perspective of miniatures. Like a kid's drawing, we don't dream in perspective. We dream in whatever comes out first and whichever appears first. Told in tiny details, these images are verbose. Like a Jane Austen novel, it is as if we both inhabit their stories while being coolly distant from their turmoil. Things are observed as they were and they are. In the words of art historian 𝘚𝘵𝘪𝘭𝘵, nothing is happening, has happened, or will happen. It is all a dream, a fantasy, and that fantasy without event, without story, has been expressed with a stunning visual clarity in which every part, every brick or tile, every bit of inscription has been defined with utmost precision. In repose, residents exist in a ceaseless alternation between their specific mortal entanglements and the universal structure of the image.
Jadi selama saya duduk 40 tahun di Kampung Baru ni, saya dapatilah ya, ramai juga pelancong-pelancong yang datang ke Kampung Baru nak tengok kebudayaan orang Melayu di sini. Dia tengok kampung contoh di sini, Kampung Baru ni. Kebanyakannya pelancong yang datang Kampung Baru ni, dia nak tengok bangunan tinggi-tinggi, dia tengok kampung, nak tengok kebudayaan orang sini, nak tengok culture orang sini macam mana.
So you've mentioned that we must think beyond this preservation, right? Think beyond the kind of like house as a unit. So how do you think your work stands in relation to that conversation?
I think I take a step back. This whole process, more than almost 2 years kind of process, make me think about heritage. You know, how do we preserve heritage? It's not so much about this against that. You know, I mean, keep this old thing and, you know, or use the new thing. The whole process of this makes me think about, I think we are at a point in our life, I mean, especially this current time, it's about managing change.
We might think of these fantastic images as resigned to the inevitable fate of Kampung Baru. Just another commemorative project within, in Leon's words, a cemetery of artifacts. New malls will join the pantheon of urban recreation space. Luxury apartments with their geometric metal facades will dot Kuala Lumpur's skyline. In an issue as politically charged as gentrification and redevelopment, what can art do? Historically, Indo-Persian miniatures were made to be seen behind closed doors, contained within the covers of books or albums. The art form was largely private and privatized, made for an owner's pleasure, stored in the homes of royalty and wealthy colonialists. In this display of the 𝘚𝘩𝘦 series, Leon does away with miniatures in a book and instead mounts his paintings on the social space of an installation entitled Stilt House No. 1. Modeled after the stilt homes he depicts, but painted in the baby pink of anonymous millennial airspace, the installation speaks to coded neutrality. What is apparent also has a lineage. These paintings may speak in dreams and float in front of our eyes, but their allegorical fictions chart the hopes of generations and speak the entangled truths of time, history, and capital. In Leon's words, in the act of observing, in the act of creating, we must think beyond just preserving the house. In 𝘚𝘵𝘪𝘭𝘵 Gallery, located just across the highway from Kampong Baru, he makes not images, but room.